Hello everyone, I'm your host Photaru, and on today's episode of On Cloud Anime, I will be talking about a select few animes that I watched in the month of January. And the first anime I'm going to talk about is the anime Frieren. Now, a long time ago, I actually decided to make a Frieren video, but I actually scrapped it because I was making the claim that it was the best anime of the entire fall season, and I actually wanted to get a better grasp of what the anime was about before making such a bold claim. The thing is with Frieren is that I do still see it as one of the better animes that came out last year. I had been first introduced to Frieren during the summer when people kept on recommending the manga to me, and I had decided to give it a chance to see whether or not this was something that I would actually be into, and it definitely hooked me in with the first couple of chapters. A lot of people say that the first chapter made them cry a lot. Personally, I was not one of those people, but I could definitely understand why. After reading the first couple of chapters, I waited for the anime to come out, and I think that was a pretty good decision because if you looked at any clips involving Frieren, you would notice that the animation looks very beautiful. And the reason for this is that it's made by Studio Madhouse, the same company that animated One Punch Man. And believe it or not, this is not going to be the last time I talk about One Punch Man. So even though Frieren's animation is top tier, it's not the best part of the show. One thing I like better about this show are the character dynamics, because every conversation that these characters have just flows so naturally. Anime has this problem where guys will act weird in front of girls, and it could lead to some very uncomfortable scenes. Now sure, Frieren has one or two comments about boobs, but it's not like anything creepy. There's also like no unwanted thirst. But by far the best thing about this show are the plot devices used to deepen each character. This is like one of the animes where every time I see a flashback, I'm not annoyed at the fact, which is very impressive since a lot of popular animes like to put in flashbacks and instead it messes with the pacing, where for Frieren, the flashbacks actually play in its favor. You see, in the first episode, we don't really get to know how the party was when Frieren was traveling with them before the Demon King. But these flashbacks help provide extra context to who they were and how they decide to raise the kids that Frieren is now working with in her party, leading to building a deeper connection since Frieren knows the mentors that these kids grew up with and in return helps Frieren with her goal of understanding why humans act the way they do. So much to the point that Frieren is the new anime that is #1 on my anime list, and it's been there for a decent amount of time, but it's probably going to get overthrown eventually. I think that can really go to show how well that these characters really touch your heart in Frieren. Another thing I want to discuss are the openings and ending. And can I just say that Yaotsubi is yet to miss on an anime opening? And I really appreciate the effort that Yaotsubi goes through when they make an opening, because they actually end up reading the mangas and then making the song based off of that. And that takes effort for everyone in the band to read a manga and then make a song after it. And for anyone that tries to say that this opening doesn't match the vibe of the show, if you look at the lyrics, then you would be quickly disproven. The second opening is still taking some time to grow on me, but I definitely like it a lot more than the first time I listened to it. But that doesn't matter because the ending song for Frieren is the best one in my opinion. I love Millet's voice, and what she did for this ending, it feels so amazing. I know that this song may not be for everyone, but the vibes just hit with me. But if you need a break from the craziness that was the Shibuya arc of Jujutsu Kaisen, then Frieren is definitely your anime. With amazing character dynamics and tons of meaningful moments, I can see why Frieren was such a heavy recommendation for me even before the anime came out. The next anime I will be talking about is The Apothecary Diaries, which is an anime that came out in fall as well. The difference between this and Frieren is that I don't think that a lot of people are talking about Apothecary Diaries, although the people that I have heard that did watch it seem to really enjoy it. So I just want to give it a little bit more time before I decide to watch this show. And then time went on, and as fall was approaching its end, it had completely slipped my mind that I was supposed to watch this show. That was until I heard the opening. And I'm gonna let you in on something. This opening goes hard. After the show had given me the reminder to watch it, I finally decided to binge it, and the first thing that interested me was the setting that this whole story takes place, which in this anime's case is Imperial China, and I really haven't heard of an anime taking place during this time, so immediately I was interested. The most fascinating thing about this show is the talk of poisons and medicines, and how the knowledge of both these things are used to solve other people's problems. And what really makes these fascinating is the fact that all these things that the main character says about poisons and medicines are true to some extent. Now, obviously, you're not going to become a doctor, but it's interesting to learn things such as how apothecaries used to test things on themselves just to see the effect. And when the Apothecary Diaries isn't teaching you a medical lesson that you're most likely going to forget in 5 minutes, it usually turns into a slice of life, which I really enjoy because of the main character Mao Mao. At first, she may come off as calm and collected, but you can easily tell that she's a gremlin at heart whenever you mention poison or booze. And she's not someone who's willing to put up with your shit. Another thing about a lot of female characters is that they fall into the trap of needing a love interest to be interesting. In this case, Mao Mao does have potential for a love interest in the story, but it doesn't diminish her character in any way, shape, or form. It may be hard to believe since she was kidnapped in the first episode, but she's very capable on her own. I also wanted to say that the fashion in this time period is very eye-catching to me. It's kind of sad to know that this anime went under so many people's radars because it's such a good show. The Apothecary Diaries is going to be a 24-episode anime, meaning that you'll have plenty of time to catch up, and you don't have to worry about spoilers since the show is not that popular. But it's also not exactly surprising since Frieren and Jujutsu Kaisen were airing at the same time as this. The closest comparison I can give for the Apothecary Diaries is imagine Phoenix Wright during the investigation scenes, where you're looking around for pieces of evidence on what may have happened in a certain situation. Mao Mao gives her 2 cents by spreading her knowledge on medicine or poisons, and then the problem is solved. If you're even somewhat interested in the show, I would say watch the first episode because I think that it gives you a decent feel for what the show is going to be like. And considering we're only halfway through the season, if you catch up and you're a medical student, maybe you'll be able to fact check whether or not the facts of medicine are still accurate. The last anime I want to talk about is Mashle. Not that long ago, I made a video where I talked about anime in 2023, and some animes that I mentioned were Apothecary Diaries, Frieren, and Mashle. I had specifically chosen to not speak about Frieren or Apothecary Diaries because I wanted to speak about them in this video. The only thing I could say about Mashle was that it looked kinda cool. Because out of all the anime that I'm talking about today, I had the least amount of knowledge of Mashle prior to watching it. And to be entirely honest with you, Mashle was also the anime that I was the most worried about because the main reason I didn't watch the first season was because I thought that the concept was way too similar to One Punch Man, and I didn't like One Punch Man at all. I've also heard mixed opinions when it comes to whether or not people think the show is funny. But then after the second opening decided to blow up everywhere, I decided that it was finally time for me to just give it a shot. And I was pleasantly surprised. I actually had a better time watching this than I did One Punch Man. Is that an unpopular opinion? Definitely. And maybe for some people they'll be drawn away from Mashle because it doesn't feel the most original. I think that the first half of season 1 when it comes to Mashle is kind of just alright, but it really picks up towards the later part of the season. The world of Mashle is basically just Harry Potter. Listen, I don't know too much about Harry Potter, but touching an inanimate object and then it assigning you a house based on your personality, but this was clearly a parody, so I'm just gonna let it slide. Another component of Mashle is the humor. Humor in anime is very subjective. Maybe you'll find the jokes in the show to not be funny at all, or maybe you'll find them to be hilarious. For me, it was kind of in the middle. I think the jokes that normally land for me are when Mashle does something really dumb with a really straight face. Now, the entire reason I started Mashle was because of Season 2 currently airing, and I want to talk about it a bit, and I just want to say that so far, Season 2 of Mashle has me way more invested than the entirety of Season 1. I think the fact that there's more of an internal struggle within the school makes the story more interesting since there was nothing really going on for a majority of the first season. The biggest thing I hope for is that since the story is developing more, I hope that the characters go through more development as well. Because I think that if they stay the exact same that they were before, then that would be kind of annoying. And I want to talk about the opening of Mashle again, because yes, I understand that the second opening is really good and I can understand the hype behind it. But all I'm saying is that the ending song for Season 2 is so underrated. I think I actually prefer this over the opening, and I added it to my playlist almost immediately. I don't know if this is recency bias, but out of all the openings and endings I've talked about today, this one is probably my favorite one. But that's all I'm going to talk about today. If there's any animes that you want me to watch, let me know, because none of them are exactly set in stone, so I'm open to suggestion. And with that, I'm your host Photaru, seeing you later.